Hello, this is Simon. Welcome to the final edition of Feedback Sonntag for German 102. We've made it. You've done everything in this course up until the final exam. So I have just graded your final Analysen and published the grade, so make sure to take a look at that. Let me know if you have any questions about your grades. Everything else otherwise in the course should be up to date with your grades except for participation. So for the next day or two, I will look at everything you've done in the course and give you that final participation grade as well. At that point in time, you will know your grade going into the exam, and I'll be sure to reiterate that by sending you each an email and just letting you know where you stand. So going into the exam, what is your current grade, and then you can kind of figure out, depending on what you do, how you do in the exam, what your final grade in the course will likely be. So we'll make sure you're as well prepared psychologically going into the exam as possible. For the exam itself, just a couple of kind of basic housekeeping things, I suppose. First, the exam will be 2.5 hours, and second, there are no resources allowed in the exam, so no dictionaries, no cheat sheets or whatnot. It's simply going to be you and your German knowledge, and we want to see what can you do with everything you learned this term in the course. Okay. Now you'll have seen online on Learn that I did put a list of the items that will be tested on the exam, and this list is comprehensive. There are no tricks on this exam. I don't like that idea of giving something unexpected. What you see in this list is what the exam consists of, and that's it. Nothing else will be tested. At the same time, too, if you look at this list, that's more or less what we did in the course. So there's no surprises, but there's also really nothing that we're omitting from the exam. So, and I guess structurally as well, the exam will consist primarily of a number of kind of shorter questions, and those are the kind of questions where we'll ask you to either fill in blank or maybe give you a bunch of jumbled up words and to construct an appropriate sentence, putting the words in order and conjugating correctly, that kind of stuff, some written comprehension, and then there will also be one larger written question where we'll ask you then to write a pretty substantial piece of text. And again, that's just to see, what can you do if you're asked to write something, and write something where it's not just sentence after sentence, but a bit of flow as well, right? So that's kind of what the exam looks like structurally. But yeah, in terms of topics, I just wanted to, for this last feedback Sonntag, go into a bit of detail in each of these topic ideas, if need be, just so that you're aware of what we're looking for each of those, okay? So the first on the list is modal verbs. I think no surprise there, right? It's just a matter of knowing how to select the correct modal verb and how to conjugate it and what to do with that sentence, right? And in that case, what is it? Well, you take the modal verb, you're conjugating the modal verb in accordance with the subject, and then you're putting the verb in the infinitive at the end of the sentence, right? So it's just, yeah, what modal verb do I use and how do I build that sentence? The imperative, so again, knowing how to give commands. There, it's just a matter of knowing what the different kinds of commands are, right? It's either going to be the do form, or wir, ihr, or the sie, so it's really only 4. It's just a matter of knowing, okay, who am I giving the command to, and how do I construct that imperative sentence? And in that case, right, it's the verb goes in the first position, kind of like a question, but it's not a question because often it's a command with an exclamation mark at the end. But formulation-wise, it has similarities to a question word. There'll be some on comparative and superlative. So, the idea of gut, besser, am besten. Each adjective will change differently depending on what the adjective itself is. In most cases, though, it is that idea of having er on the end for the comparative, and then the en on the end for the superlative. So just knowing how to kind of scaffold up depending on what the adjective is. You'll have to know the difference between nominative, accusative, and dative case, and really knowing when to use each, right? And there certainly have been some feedback Freitag or feedback Sonntags on when to use each and what to kind of. So I'm not going to go into detail on that now because there are PowerPoints and the videos available to reinforce that. But knowing why do I use nominative, why do I use the accusative, what do I have to see in the sentence to use the dative as well, and then parceling that out as best as possible. Knowing the past tense of modal verbs, right? So we spent a bit of time on not just having modal verb sentences, but what if there was something in the past tense? What do we do with those modal verbs? how do we conjugate a modal verb for the past tense, and just again brush up on that, know what each modal verb's past tense looks like. Knowing your possessive pronouns and how to use them, so the meins, the deins, sein, uns, euer, those kind of things. When do we use them? What's the correct possessive pronoun for each of the personal pronouns? Certainly we spent a lot of time on Nebensätze, right? You've done a lot of writing with Nebensätze, so knowing when to use the subordinated conjunctions like wenn, das, weil, and then what do we do with the verb, right? And again, what is the verb doing? It's going to the end of the sentence, end of the clause. So just being certainly aware of that. Knowing the past tense with the past participle, right? And the past participle is often like GE something. So really it's a matter of knowing, okay, well, what is the auxiliary verb that I need to use? Is it sein? Does the verb imply some sort of movement? Then I use sein. Or is it haben because the verb does not suggest movement? So I use haben. And again, the majority of cases use haben. But just knowing what's the auxiliary verb, which one do I use, and then what is the past participle of that verb, and what do I do with that? You need to know your prepositions for location versus movement. Again, we spent a bit of time on that. So it's knowing, again, what is the verb? Does the verb express movement? Then my preposition I'm going to use, we use the accusative case. And if the preposition or if the verb suggests a lack of movement, just location, then we're going to use the dative case, right? And of course, there are some prepositions that only use dative and some that only use accusative. So it's really knowing, okay, what are the ones that use accusative? What are the ones that use dative? And what are the ones that can use both? And if they can use both, what does the verb tell me? And what should I use? Okay. We've been using a little bit of werde and hätte near the end of the term. So again, knowing how to use those two verbs and how to use, with werde especially, a verb with werde, because werde alone isn't enough. We need to have another verb to go with it, whereas hätte alone is enough. And again, there was a feedback Sonntag on that, I believe. Knowing the passive tense with werden, so wurde, right, and when to use that and how to conjugate it accordingly. And again, as I said, just a final kind of long-term or long-form written exercise too. So that is the exam in a nutshell, right? Each of those components you spent time on in this course. Nothing should be a surprise here. But if anything's unclear, let Sarah or I know, right? As you study for this exam, if you have to write us an email about a question or write something on the discussion board with your question, please do so. We want you to be prepared as best as possible for the exam. Again, I do not want any surprises with this exam. It is just a matter of you demonstrating to us how much you've learned. So with that said, I mean, thank you for the term. Thank you for spending your time learning German and investing your time in this online course. Hopefully you found it beneficial. I know Sarah and I have enjoyed having you in the course and seeing your growth in your German. It's always fantastic to see how much we do grow from week 1 to week 12. So ideally, hopefully you want to continue to take more German, and there are options. 201 would be the next step if you want to continue your German journey. Otherwise, though, again, thanks for a great term. All the best with the final exam. And yeah, viel Glück. Okay? Tschüss.